Welcome to CREPN Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals who work with investors, buyers, and sellers of commercial real estate coast to coast. Whether you're an investor, broker, lender, property manager, attorney, or accountant, we're here to learn from the experts.
Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CREPN Radio. We're so glad you could join us. My name's Jader Gross. I'm a real estate investor and a commercial property insurance broker. I've been an insurance broker for over 25 years, and my primary client is and has been real estate professionals. Based on this, I'm continually looking for more information about real estate investing for both my own investments and so that I can be a better resource for my clients. And the result of that has led to this, Commercial Real Estate Pro Network and CREPN Radio. If you have any real estate insurance questions or need help or you need to talk to somebody, please reach out to me. I'll do all I can to help. You can find us on you can Google Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. We'll also have the blog jdarrengross.com. If you found us on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, iTunes, we're so glad you found us. We'd love to hear from you, so please consider commenting, liking, sharing, following. All of your comments are greatly appreciated. All right, now that you know a little bit about us, let's get into our program today. Earlier, I had the opportunity to speak with our guest, Pam Goodwin of Goodwin Commercial Real Estate. And we talk about commercial real estate single-tenant lease pad development opportunities and restaurants. Today, we are so fortunate to have our guest from Texas. We're going to talk a little bit about real estate investment opportunities, commercial real estate investment opportunities with our guest, Pam Goodwin. She's the CEO of Goodwin Commercial Real Estate. Pam, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad you're able to make it. So you're down in a suburb of Dallas, is that right?
Correct. Just based there. Been living in Texas now. Next month it'll be 20 years. So thank goodness we're in a state with real estate is definitely hopping in the state of Texas. And as I drive around looking for property, there are more cranes and more activity going up. So it's a very exciting time to be in real estate here.
Oh, that's great. Definitely better than the no cranes and empty buildings, right?
That's right. So I'm glad, from the 2008 time frame, we had a little bit, not as bad as a lot of the rest of the parts of the country, but thank goodness Texas has been able to ride it out and on a really, really good growth path going on now.
Got it. So before we get going here, I wanted to see if you could tell the listeners a little bit about your background and your experience, how you got started in commercial real estate.
Sure. I'm a graduate of the University of Nebraska, so I'm a big Cornhusker fan. Are
there any little Cornhusker fans?
No, we're pretty powerful when it comes to our football team. So we love our Cornhuskers, and I'm still a diehard fan here. Even drive a red car. So anyway,
there you go.
I ended up getting a degree in interior design, and always thought I was going to be designing hotels. And I ended up going to work for a company in Omaha who was an office and shopping center developer, and that kind of launched my career in the shopping center industry. And after that, I did interior design probably for about a year, and then after that, ended up getting into the shopping center, more on the design and tenant coordination aspect of it. I mean, I love shopping malls because I love the shop, so it was a perfect fit for me. And then after that time frame, I thought, instead of hotel design, I had a crazy idea thinking I wanted to open up a restaurant. So when I moved here from Los Angeles at that time and moved to Dallas, ended up working for one of the largest restaurant companies, Brinker International, here based in Dallas, and which at the time owned 7 different concepts, but most people are familiar with Chili's and Maggiano's. That's the two that they're remaining with. So after working for a restaurant company, realizing how difficult it is to, make money and how competitive it is, I was on the property development side, in which I developed more than 50 pad sites, which gave me excellent experience how to, acquire property and develop it and work with city to get that, property zoned. And then at that point, I realized I wanted to start my own development company. And this month in February, I've had it for going on 10 years now. So it's been a lot of fun.
Oh, that's great. I saw on your website, and it looks like you've authored a couple of books.
I have. One day I actually ran into Zig Ziglar, the motivational speaker. He's passed away, but I ran into him one day. He was based, lived here in Dallas, and he said, everybody in their lifetime needs to write a book. So he asked me if I had written a book. I said no, and I thought, there's no way. I never did that great in school. English was never my top subject, but so for me to write a book seemed a little overwhelming, but it's been one of my biggest accomplishments. And yes, I've written 2 books, and it's. I think everybody needs to write a book. It was a great experience.
Well, that's great. And Zig Ziglar, I've listened to a bunch of his stuff. What was it? See You at the Top? Was that his?
Yes.
I think that was one of his books, or kind of a little program. He was great. Well, that's really neat. And I think I saw a picture you met Warren Buffett too, or?
I did. Nebraska Furniture Mart recently opened up here in the Colony, Texas, and Nebraska Furniture Mart, since I'm based in Omaha, it was exciting that they opened, the largest furniture store based in the United States. And Warren Buffett is one of the owners of it, and I was actually representing a restaurant which is about to open up next month, called Rock and Brews. And so, because I did that Rock and Brews deal out in front of Nebraska Furniture Mart, I had the great opportunity to get a VIP pass when Nebraska Furniture Mart opened, and I had a great opportunity to meet him. And he was always on my bucket list to meet, being from Nebraska, and since he's, still living in Omaha, great time to meet him. Super nice man.
I forget is his. I think they refer to him as the Maven from, or what do they? He has a moniker kind of thing. I thought they refer to him. I don't know. He's a fascinating man. I've not read anything, but it's always his interviews. He seems like just very well grounded, well thought out, very impressive result oriented guy. So, and then was it Barbara? Who was the other one I saw that you had?
Barbara Corcoran.
Yeah, and she's on. I think Shark Tank is where I'm familiar with her. And
correct, right? She was always. I had read her book years ago, even before she was on Shark Tank, and because she used to always be on the Today Show giving advice, and I just always wanted to meet her. And so I just reached out on her website to contact her, and she offers private consultations for business. And after going through the screening, had the opportunity to meet with her to, discuss commercial real estate. And she also provided my testimonial for my first book, The 1 Cent Lemonade to $1 Million Deals. And so it was a great experience to fly up to her Park Avenue office and meet with her for 2 hours one-on-one. And if you've seen her on Shark Tank, imagine what it was like to meet just one-on-one with her for 2 hours. It was a great experience.
Oh,
I think the key thing I really learned from her was she takes immediate action on what she is working on. And for example, her cousin's Maine Lobster was looking at her retail location, And with my retail background, she immediately sent them an email saying that they needed to contact me to see if I could help them negotiate a deal that they were looking at going into a mall. And so she takes immediate action, doesn't wait and think about it, how some people wait, dwell on it. She takes immediate action and moves forward with it. But it was definitely a lot of fun too. And she helped me with my business plan, so it was a lot of fun.
That's neat. A neat list of impressive celebrities that you've had the opportunity to meet with there. I'm curious, out of all that, I mean, Zig is definitely a motivational guy, and Warren's clearly a fundamental investor. I think that's kind of his, the fundamentals of whatever he's investing in. And Barbara, any personal mantra come out of that, or do you have a personal mantra you operate under?
I definitely do. The two that I say to myself for motivation and encouragement, the one is never, never, never give up. And I actually have that plaque in my office. I definitely follow that. And then the second one that I always follow is find a way. And so those two I definitely remind myself every day to keep motivated. But anything that you want to do, you just have to find a way. If you want it bad enough, you will find a way to get it, has always been my mantra.
Well, seem like reasonable words to live by, especially when you're trying to make a deal with different parties and find some middle ground. That's great. Well, let's get going here a little bit and talk about commercial real estate, and specifically the area that you've carved out and specialize in. And if I understand right, your specialty is the pad sites for single tenant lease and a lot of restaurants. Is that correct?
Correct. I decided I had a mentor tell me, several years ago that you need to find a niche. You need to be a specialist and not a generalist. I guess it would be similar to, your general practice doctor, what he or she may make versus going to a cardiologist. You can make 3 times as much. So you want to be the known person, the go-to person to specialize in that area. So after working at Brinker and specializing, knowing a lot about restaurants and knowing what they look for to have the best location, I represent restaurants since I know, knowing what Chili's, which locations they have done the best at, and everything that they looked at from alcohol sales to, just all of the demographics. And then finding a niche definitely on just a single tenant net lease deals, which is buying property and leasing it to Walgreens, Chase, McDonald's, all of those pad sites has become our niche and our expertise.
It's interesting. You mentioned that, and I'm always amazed how you kind of go through life and you see things, but maybe you don't recognize exactly the opportunity or what that is. But I mean, all of the retail establishments or any kind of like strip mall or different locations. I guess what I'm trying to say is, before thinking about talking to you, I hadn't really paid that close attention to all the different pad sites. And as I was preparing for this, I was looking at it going like, wow, there's, that's kind of a formula, as you indicated, and I was wondering if you could kind of talk a little bit about, what are some of the criteria that go into that site selection? I mean, I'm assuming location, traffic. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. A lot of the tenants, a lot of the national tenants, for example, we're representing a coffee house now called Scooter's Coffee, which is based in Omaha, Nebraska, and has 150 plus locations. But for example, a coffee location, they want to be on the going to work side versus the going home, which a lot of, banks prefer going home side. And a lot of restaurants need a lot of traffic. They like to go by movie theaters. They like to have the lunch crowd, so they prefer a lot of office to be around. And so there's different, criteria of which each of them, will all look for. A lot of them like the corner location. Access is very, very important. And, of course, parking for a restaurant is a priority. But definitely to be around a lot of activity. So, popular restaurants can make it.
Right. Well, in the traffic, it's funny you mentioned that. I remember there was years ago in my commute, I remember there was a pizza place on the go-to-work side of the street. And I say was because it, I don't know if, they didn't think that through or whatever, but I know it's no longer there. So probably would have been a good location for a coffee shop, not a pizza place on the go-to-work side. Well, on the single tenant lease kind of thing, and I'm familiar with this. I mean, I'm an insurance broker, and I've got clients that are both landlords and as well as the tenants. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, is there an ideal size, or is that kind of more set by the franchise or the operation? Is that more like a standardized size, or is that kind of a universal? Is there a universal size parameter that brand A, brand B, brand C, they're all similar, or is that very unique?
I mean, as far as
the square footage, the footprint, if you were looking for, I don't know, a particular brand, you mentioned a couple different, Chili's. Is their footprint size of a restaurant, is it unique to their operation, or is that kind of a common square footage and more of the badge and the branding that they put on the building that make it unique? Or is that something that if there was, and I'm thinking from an investor standpoint, if I were to buy a spot and lease it to a brand, and for whatever reason the things change and that site is no longer operated by that brand, is that design, is that a pretty easy to find another tenant, or is that are they pretty unique to the particular brand? Am I making sense?
Yes. With the single tenant net lease deals, it all comes down to the same thing as far as in real estate. It's all location, location, location. And all of those national tenants, if they're a public company, they all have a type of credit rating. As far as the square footage, a Chili's restaurant can be similar to an Applebee's. That casual diner, they're typically 4,000 square feet and above. And a Starbucks or a fast food user, they can fit on a half an acre. A Walgreens can fit on 1.5 acres to 2 acres. But let's say that Walgreens or CVS goes out of business. You want to make sure you have that right location to be able to get that rent that's equivalent to what that existing tenant was paying in case they go out. But when you're doing tenant net lease investment property, it all comes down to location and the credit of the tenant. For example, a corporate McDonald's, and it's all based on a cap rate, and the lower the cap rate is what you want to sell at, and you want to buy at a high cap. So you want to buy at 8, 9, 10 or higher cap. So it's kind of the opposite thinking as far as in your return. But the cap rate really just means instead of getting 0 to 1% at your current bank and interest, if you were to buy a Starbucks, it would be typically a 5 to 6 cap, and you would make, if you paid cash, you would make 5 to 6% on your money.
Right. Right. No, and that is an interesting inverse relationship there with the. And I think that the higher the cap rate, the higher the cash flow, but the lower the cap rate, the higher the value of the property is kind of the way that more in demand. Is that
correct?
Easy way to remember that. I know
it's kind of just based on if the probability of that tenant possibly, terminating or going out of business. Your McDonald's will typically sign at least, most of them 10 to 20 year lease, and most often you don't really see a McDonald's going out of business. But I think a lot of people don't even realize that you can buy a McDonald's, you can buy a Starbucks, and the nice thing about it is you don't have to operate it, and so it's a really nice investment. It's just that single tenant investment, knowing, you're going to be making that mailbox money every month.
Yeah, and on these single tenant net lease, is that the tenant responsible for all of the maintenance, taxes, insurance, etc., or is it a triple net lease typically, or how does that work?
Well, they're a triple net, which means that the tenant is paying as you mentioned, the insurance, the common area maintenance, and the taxes on the property, or sometimes it's a double net, and so that's why you really have to make sure. But the double net typically is the landlord is responsible for, could be the roofing and the structure is how they typically set it up. But then the tenant is still paying the taxes and all of the common area maintenance. So you really have to, review the lease, because every single one of them is different, and it makes a huge difference, when you're buying these properties, what to look for.
Right. And when you're buying a property and finding the tenant, are the leases, they come with built-in increases typically, or is that is it a flat rate for the number of years, or how does that usually work?
And it all depends on the tenant. For example, a lot of the Walgreens deals that they were doing, 25-year deals, they would only do a flat rent for that entire 25 years. But if you're developing property, you always want to put those rent bumps in. It's always, investors really prefer rent bumps when they're buying those investments. They don't want to flat rent the entire term of the lease. So it just depends on the tenant, but most of them do have rent bumps. But if you are buying it, you want to make sure that there are rent bumps. There's different things to look for when you're buying these investments.
Right. And on one of these, like a 4,000 square foot development in just your area, Dallas, there, can you give some sort of perspective, some numbers as to what one could expect, what kind of capital it would take to get into something like that?
Sure. Of course, it depends if you're a private investor that has cash, or if you're an investor. Most of the lenders these days require a minimum of 20% down on the property. So, we just recently closed on a small one-tenant office building here in Dallas, and just took out a bank loan on that, required 20% down on that. And so, but the nice thing is people don't realize that, because I guess growing up, and even myself, there's so many people that tell you debt is bad, but you really have to look at it in real estate. Once I learned that there's good debt, and what I mean by that is if you have a tenant paying your bank loan off, and then you'll have additional cash flow on top of that. So your tenant may be paying you $3,000 a month for rent and all of the extra charges, but your bank loan is only $1,600, and so that can be nice cash flow every month. So that's what I mean by good debt.
Right. No, and it allows you to leverage into a property that hopefully is appreciating, over time as well. I'm a big fan of that good debt.
I'm always encouraging people to diversify their portfolio to buy commercial real estate because, you can buy stuff, you can go on loopnet.com and find commercial property for $25,000 and up. So a lot of people, just always have in their mind it's too expensive, it's too difficult, all kinds of things. But I still think it's a really, really, knowing what to buy, where to buy. There's some really good opportunities in there to make a lot of money and sometimes very, very quickly by flipping it.
Right. What, I'm just kind of curious, the marketplace there in Dallas, you mentioned all the cranes going on, and is the restaurant market a hopping market? Is there a lot of growth in that market space?
Well, in Dallas here, with no mountains and no ocean like your state, we have to go eat out a lot. So we have a lot of new restaurants, and we have a lot of new restaurants coming from California that will definitely test. A couple of years ago, we were excited when In-N-Out Burger, came to Texas. And, even using a cattle farm here in Texas because, they want to use that fresh meat. But definitely the restaurant, new concepts popping up daily. We now have El Pollo Loco coming here, too. So, we have a lot of chains, that are always expanding in the, especially Dallas market. They like Dallas and Houston and San Antonio and then Austin, 4 big cities here in Texas for their growth plans.
Yep, Big D. Remember driving through there. Everything is big in Dallas, or big in Texas and big in Dallas. The exception I would say is your on ramps there to the freeway. I've always been amazed at the shortness and the on ramp there. It feels like you're at a drag strip trying to get on the freeway, but
and we have a lot of corporations, large corporations moving to Dallas area. We just now have Toyota moving here, I think it's more than 3,000 people from California, all of their big corporation here. And up in Frisco, not too far from where I am, Frisco, Texas is one of the hottest markets in Texas. And in 1 mile, they have more than, it's called a billion with a B, $1 billion mile of all brand new development, and that's where the new Dallas Cowboy football brand new practice stadium's going. And a lot of foreign investors from Dubai have actually bought property around there too. So a lot is under construction for new office, the new Cowboy Stadium, a lot new restaurants and a lot new retailers going in that 1 mile, which is on the Dallas Tollway there in Frisco.
Well, it sounds like the economy is pretty strong then if all the, especially and I've always thought this, Texas kind of has its own little, I wouldn't say little, its own economy from a standpoint of a very growth-oriented state, and it sounds like that's what you're seeing with all of this movement and new companies, new restaurants coming into the state. Is that still the case?
Yes, Texas is, it's still booming. It's, definitely a great place to raise your family. We've been here, like I said, for 20 years, and we have 2 teenage boys now, and I thought I would just be here for a short time and going on 20 years. It's been a great place to, we have no state tax, and that's a big incentive for people. And It's just it's a really easy place to live, and especially to travel from out of Dallas. We can go direct anywhere here in the United States. So it's a great place, and a lot of great airlines. American Airlines is based here. Southwest Airlines is based here. We have so many large corporations based here, from JCPenney's to the Container Store to, a lot of corporations, because a lot of good employee base, a lot of good employees to find here based in Dallas.
Right. No, the definitely the move or just kind of that, I guess just a pro-business attitude is always what I've heard about Texas and certainly my dealings with clients there and people that live and work there. It's never been anything but, so definitely pro-business. I wanted to ask you a little bit more on just the kind of the restaurant thing there. Do you have any kind of a sense of, I mean, obviously there's a lot of growth. You've got new opportunities coming in. Is there anything that this is reflective of? Is it pro-business mindset in Texas? Is it the economy's doing well? Is it gas being, cheap? I mean, $30 or was it $30 or $40 a barrel oil? Anything you can point to that really, is there anything you see that you can point to?
I think just everything you mentioned, just definitely with the lower gas prices. I just paid $1.35 a couple days ago.
$1.35 for gas?
$1.35.
Holy mackerel.
I know, and I actually paid, a couple of weeks ago, I paid 65 cents with my Kroger card with my fuel points. I even took a picture of it, but, with that gives people a lot more disposable income to be able to go out to eat and, spend that money. I mean, we have so many new restaurants, like I, said, that are just opening up here. I mean, we need to be, in Dallas, we love to shop and we love to go out to eat and we love our sports entertainment. So, with a lot of pro sports here, from the Mavs to the Cowboys to the Rangers, and, we have a lot in a lot of those areas. People like to go out to eat. And I just see it. I know growing up, it was a special treat as a family to go out to eat. And times have just completely changed with how busy everyone is. Most people are, eating out, stopping between games or after school or going to the next event. So everybody's more fast-paced and a lot more people eating out. So it generates, a lot more restaurant openings around here. And a lot of the people really find out the restaurants, one of their best markets will be in the Dallas market when they open. A lot of these companies, that's why they choose to come here.
Yeah, I forget, I was reading, I don't know if it was in the local paper here or Wall Street Journal or something like that, but just talking about how even kind of generational, the more the millennials have in many of the metro areas, and I don't know if Dallas, I would assume, is Dallas still very car-centric? I'm assuming everybody drives and has cars and
right. Yes, yeah. Everyone drives.
Right. Well, but just, and I'm also assuming that is the Dallas downtown area, is that a happening place as well, or is it more kind of a spread out kind of sprawl? I mean, a lot of the growth you mentioned, the billion mile. I mean, I'm assuming that's not in downtown. That's out in one of the outlying areas there.
Right. It's in the suburbs. So as far as downtown Dallas, they've added some new development, but it's definitely not, your Chicago, New York, walking type city. Most people will drive. That's where the American Airlines Center is, where the Mavericks and, our hockey team plays, the Stars. Right. And so most people will just drive down there, go to the game, maybe go to a restaurant close by and then go back home. And so but they're starting some new development and trying to pick up that area, as far as to be hip. They've kind of done, I think what they've done really neat is they actually built a park going over a major freeway to connect downtown to what we call uptown.
Oh, wow. So an overpass became a park, huh?
Correct. And they did a great job on that park, and a lot of people will use that. But it seems odd that you're on a park or at the park, and then underneath you is all of the freeway below you. But that was one of the green things that the city took on, and it was very, very successful. It looks great. A lot of people go down there for yoga classes and all kinds of fun stuff. Lots of food trucks on the weekend and lots of activities. They've added a couple restaurants on it too.
You bring up the food carts thing. I know out here in Portland, there are people that have a parking lot, and they just set it up for food carts. And I think it was originally, I think a lot of the fixed locations were kind of threatened by it, because here you've spent the money on a lease, and now you've got competition that just pulled up a little trailer and stuff. But I think over time, what's happened is a lot of those food carts have become so successful that they've gone into fixed locations. And so it's been kind of an easy kind of incubator way for new opportunities to develop and stuff. But I don't know where I go with that, other than the fact that it's just we're talking restaurants and food and that. Mm-hmm. I was going to ask on the looking forward. Do you have any insight, or is there any kind of a crystal ball on restaurants and the opportunities? I mean, we've talked about location. We've talked about trying to get a national tenant, somebody that's the strength and stability with their financials to guarantee the lease for a number of years. Is there any kind of a boom bust cycle that you've seen, or with restaurants? I mean, I think again, if you've selected your tenant properly and you've got a strong tenant with a recognized brand, you've probably done a lot to insulate yourself. But is there any concerns on the backside of that? Is there or anything you see possibly in the future that concerns? Or
no, I see it continue to grow, but I have seen where we are fairly particular about our food. So I know one brand came to the Dallas market, for example, years ago and didn't do well, and then decided to come back a couple of years ago and opened all these locations. And it was kind of a Mexican concept, fast food concept, and they didn't make it at all. They're all, for sublease now. So that doesn't happen very often, but I guess like most people, you need to be, you have to have good service and you have to have good food, because we have so many choices that you have to really, really be on top of it. If not, people will not continue to go. But I really see the boom, definitely continuing. So, which is really, really good.
Yeah. If you're investing, you want to make certain there's a demand for the product. And on that, I was kind of curious, we've talked about the investing in these restaurant pad sites. Is there a healthy sales market? I mean, I think a lot of what I've been thinking that we've talked about so far is more kind of developing these locations. But is there an open transactional market for buying and selling of these locations?
As far as just
well, if one's operating and somebody wants out, are there opportunities to sell, and are there opportunities? I mean, people buying and selling these locations. I guess where I'm going is, I feel like kind of the line of our conversation so far has been more about the development opportunities and finding the location and finding the prospective tenant and building to suit kind of a situation. Is it? I mean, are people buying and selling existing, operating businesses or locations?
Right. I think all day long there's transactions. Some of the chains will have to do, what they call a sell leaseback, if they actually developed it themselves and then they actually sell it and lease it back, and then so that they can obtain additional capital to build more locations, or if they're not doing well in that one location, they can definitely sell it, for a new operator.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. So they go in and they develop it, and in a way to then raise additional capital and get out from under the debt, and they lease that location back sell the location and lease it back.
Right. We just had that with State Farm, who just built they just built a gigantic office complex, and they just decided to, sell it and lease it back. And I cannot imagine the profit that they made off of doing that. So even large corporations are developing their own property and then selling it and then leasing it back from the new person, who bought it to get that additional capital. And then I'm seeing a lot of other people, besides restaurants, office people who have been leasing space for so long. There are some great opportunities now to have owner-occupied buildings. And I'm currently helping a client now who was leasing space for more than 15 years. And when I presented the idea to build her own building, she's going to be paying about $3,000 less a month to be able to own and have her own building and then lease out the remaining portion. And a lot of people don't realize that great opportunity for owner-occupied buildings instead of leasing it and that money going nowhere.
Yeah, no, and then you have the asset at the end there if you want to, get out of the business or sell the business, you still get the opportunity to be the landlord. I love that. Love that game.
I know.
Well, I'm looking down my kind of outline of some questions, and I'm trying to think. Is there anything? I've got a couple of questions. I just want to ask you, kind of some, biggest mistake, accomplishment, that kind of stuff. But I'm just thinking on the conversation so far. Is there anything that you wish that I would have asked that you're waiting for me to ask? That you're going, is he going to ask it?
Overall, I just want to really highlight that, when I talk to so many people either in the business or out of the business, they automatically assume that they cannot buy commercial real estate. They think, it's too expensive, it's too overwhelming, whatever. They have all kinds of things in their mind that they've heard or read about. But I just really, really want to highlight that everyone and anyone can actually own commercial real estate, and there's so many benefits, to owning property. I know a lot of people go into, let's say, investing in a single-family home, but it's much easier to have, a 4 duplex with 4 tenants paying your rent than 4 single homes and all that. And so, there's just a different mindset of. In Goodwin Commercial, we really like to help people buy their first investment. And our philosophy is if we wouldn't buy it, we don't want our client to buy it. There's a lot of people out there that will just sell stuff just to make the commission. I want to be able to make sure that, our clients, are really, really happy and come back to us and will, provide referrals. But I just think everybody needs to buy commercial real estate and be diversified in their portfolio versus it's a lot more fun to own a McDonald's or Starbucks on that corner or, just a single office building, single tenant building. And, there's some great ways to find some hidden opportunities out there. I just tell everybody drives every single day. They're driving by an opportunity, and most of them are hidden. They're not going to have a sign on it, but everyone knows somebody that owns property, owns land, owns something, that you can acquire, team up with, partner with people. There's all kinds of different ways to acquire property.
No, I would agree. And I think kind of going back to your mantra there, find a way. It's kind of one of the lessons I learned in real estate is, there's kind of it's a blank canvas. I think too many times you think in terms of like buying a home you're going to buy, and there's a sign out front, and there's a kind of a path. You get the appraisal, you go to the bank, they lay it out, you check your income, and if you can afford it, you get the keys. In commercial real estate, I found, it's just wide open as far as, independent. I mean, obviously, if you're dealing with REITs and that kind of stuff, you're going to be in a lot of different situations. But just on depending on the seller's situation and the opportunities that you provide, you can clearly, find a way. So,
right.
I was going to ask you, so one of the things we didn't touch on, but I did want to address here, because I think this is a neat thing, and it goes along with this find a way. On your website, I read a couple of different times where you had kind of overcome some significant challenges for customers. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that, or if those weren't your biggest challenges. I was looking for a big challenge, kind of a wrap-up thing here, something that you'd overcome.
Well, sure. I always love a good challenge. I guess it's kind of in my blood for challenges, and I've always been a really competitive person, I guess, because growing up I've always played sports, and I still love sports to this day. But, one of the biggest challenges that I probably overcame is, the financial part. In the past, I always left it up to typically my male partners, because in commercial real estate, it's definitely a male-dominated business, versus residential real estate. But, for example, we were, trying to buy a piece of property about 90 miles away in Tyler, Texas here. And I had shown these two properties to several developers in town or several investors, and they all turned it down. But I really knew that it was a great piece of property and that I had a vision of exactly how it would turn out. So one of the challenges I overcame was my fear of getting a bank loan, the financial part of it. It kind of intimidated even me after being in it a long time, but I just decided to put my big girl pants on and figure out how to get a bank loan. And I just made a couple calls, met with the president of the two local banks, which I highly advise, talking with your local banks and finding out exactly what is required to, take out a commercial loan. And I ended up teaming up with a female who's actually in real estate, and we found a way to acquire these two properties by using her duplex buildings as the equity down. And so we actually bought these two buildings with no money down, and, we found a way. And, it was a big accomplishment for me that I was able to get that financial part. I overcame my fear, and we were able to get a loan on it. And it was just, one of my biggest success stories that I've had on the development side, that I found a way. I never gave up and made it happen.
No, that's always, I think the fear of that, just that conversation, somebody's going to judge you, or you might not measure up, kind of a situation there. And like you said, you get into it and find a way. I love that. Okay. Before we wrap up, two things. One, you've provided a giveaway here. We're going to make our listeners, or make it available for our listeners. And let's see, it's 26 lessons learned from 26 years in commercial real estate. Can you give us a little bit of a highlight, kind of a tease of what that's about, so we can let the people know?
Well, sure. Well, after I've always tried to find the shortcuts to success, and after, being in the business for so long, I kind of just outlined some of, the main things that I learned. For example, fortune is in the follow-up, and most people do not follow up after the one phone call, maybe two phone calls. I know, for example, one director of leasing for one of the largest national retailers. She's a real estate person that if you don't call her at least 5 or 6 times about your property, she knows that you're not interested in selling it to her. So fortune is definitely in the follow-up. Another thing with that is just picking up the phone and calling people. Today a lot of people would rather just hide behind their computers and email or text, but you always get so much information by just picking up the phone. One of my best things I had ever done was just cold call someone and met with them. And it turns out to this day they're one of my favorite clients. So you just never know when picking up that phone call could change your life in a way.
Yeah, no, I still love the phone, even though it seems so many people avoid answering the phone, but leave the message and get in touch, and definitely a lot more information I think you can get in the verbal rather than the back and forth electronic. I love that. What is the best advice you could give somebody considering investing in a single tenant location?
The best advice I can give to you is definitely hiring the right broker who will look out for you as far as buying your first property. You want to make sure, for example, if you were looking at a Walgreens, that broker needs, which Walgreens, A or B Walgreens is better. And that broker, the expert on it, will tell you, to look for one that has 2 drive-thrus, one that's open 24 hours. So you want to hire the broker who can, find that hidden opportunity for you. As I mentioned before, the off-market opportunities, having a broker, know what's going on in the community or exactly what you're looking for to protect you so that you're going to make money and not lose money in real estate.
No, that's definitely a words of wisdom there. Well, Pam, I've enjoyed this thoroughly, and before we let you go here, I want to let you or have you give us the best way to reach you. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they're wanting to talk to you or pursue an opportunity down there in Texas? And by the way, do you work outside of the Dallas area, or how? Give us a little bit about your territory there too.
Right. Well, we're primarily know Texas very well, but we can help you locate, and we've teamed up with different people around the country, but we can definitely help you find the right property, pretty much anywhere in the United States. We can, we have access to all of that information, so it's not just based here in Texas. We can help you anyway, but yeah, I'd love to talk to you, so feel free to call or text me at 214-929-9013. Again, 214-929-9013. Call or text anytime. Send me an email at pam@goodwincommercial.com, and also connect with me on LinkedIn. So I'd love to, connect with you on LinkedIn. And just one more plug, if you don't mind. Both of the books, Winning Ways in Commercial Real Estate, the 18 Successful Women in Vail, Tips of the Trade in the Real Estate World, that was the #1 bestseller on Amazon. And then the 1 Cent Lemonade to $1 Million Deals. Both of those books can be purchased on Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com.
Hey, great. Well, Pam, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us this morning. And I look forward to doing it again soon.
Well, great. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and hope to see you down here in Texas soon.
All right. Well, that wraps up my interview with Pam Goodwin of Goodwin Commercial Real Estate. I hope you learned a little bit about commercial real estate investment opportunities specific to the single-tenant lease development opportunities and also restaurants. Let's see. Beyond that, I just want to say thanks again for taking the time to listen. We love the fact that you do. And don't forget, there is in the show notes there's a link. You can download that those 26 lessons learned from 26 years in commercial real estate by Pam Goodwin. Don't forget, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter. Like I said, your likes, shares, follows are all greatly appreciated. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget also, if you have any real estate insurance questions, reach out to me. I'll do all I can to help. Until next time, thanks for listening to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CREPN Radio.
You're listening to CREPN Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals. For more information on this or any of our guests, like us on Facebook, CREPN Radio.